It's for Caitlin and Ruby. Okay, so let's go through. Felix, do you want to explain how you found this? Which one did you? Oh, dang it.
No, I didn't guess. I looked at the notes, but
divide by 4.
oh, I didn't divide by 4. I just kind of grouped them by 2s, and if it's odd, it's a negative, and if it's an even.
What if like 45 would not be negative I though? The 45 would not be.
50-50 chance.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I group them by 2s, and if there's an odd like amount of 2s, then it's a negative, and there's an even amount of 2s.
You didn't know that?
Okay.
That's what I do.
No, I do know that. I know what he's talking about. Making sure he knows, but I want a better explanation. Adi?
Well, no, my calculator's not working.
Oh man.
Okay, Carly? Sorry, I'm acknowledging, but I want to finish the question so we're all on it.
Wait, did they already say divide by 4 and then use the remainder?
No. So we.
Okay.
That's
so
good.
Yeah, you divide by 4.
So it's similar to how Felix is doing it, but I mean you're right, but it's not exactly the way we were doing it, and some people might get confused about what you're saying. So Carly says you take 47 and divide it by 4. Why are you dividing by 4? Because there's 4 options. Exactly, 4 options. And I even put it in the order it goes. I, -1, -I, 1. Awesome. And then you look at the remainder. So
Replace it.
exactly, right? Because 11 times 4 is 44, and that gives you 3 remainder. So if you have 1 remainder, it's I. 2 remainder is -1. 3 remainder, negative I. Let's see. Are we done submitting?
Cool.
Yes, we are. Awesome. Okay.
Is that the first time it's happened all year? Everybody's submitting.
Oh, we were so close.
Yeah, I'm the one
Yeah.
person that got it wrong.
Okay.
Do we have another one?
It's all good. Yes, we have one more, and what?
Have you seen the video of the ice cream though, where you flip the ice cream?
Oh, I haven't sent this yet. I'm sending it right now.
Are you a Red
You have
Sox
to
fan?
like do all paint.
Yeah.
Red Sox fan, Patriots fan, Bruins fan.
Also, it randomly got cold in here. Cool.
It's been nice.
Did you know that they're thinking about having a trade Mookie to LA?
What?
Yeah.
This is the best thing that happened to the Red Sox.
Yes.
It would be trash.
Yes.
I'm for that. And the Dodgers would be that much better.
Okay.
No.
Whatever.
We're
All right. So everyone should have this.
Oh my god, this is in the bag, Mr. Brian.
In the bag.
Do it on paper. All right. This is a good practice for the test. I hear the word foil coming out a lot. Exactly. You gotta foil it. And what do you do when you get an I squared?
12, you do it.
I canceled.
If you have an I squared, you replace it with -1.
Wait.
Okay.
Mine is.
It's all cool. I'm gonna pull up the
I got a 3i squared.
what?
What? Ooh.
So I need to move this over.
What?
Okay, let's see. We have 0 people submitted, so I just want you to simplify, aka foil it and make it as simple as possible.
Wait.
We switched it before we.
It's 4.
No, so you're gonna foil it out, and then whenever you have an I squared, that's when you're gonna have it. Sorry, so you can see it.
Yeah, I was 5. So it would, I have negative 3i squared. 2 times 4 is 8.
So I'm gonna do it for you.
For some reason, I got
3i plus 2i. No.
I'm gonna do it for you. 0 people have submitted. When you're done writing,
Wait. So you
2.
switch. I'm -1.
You switch I squared. When you have an I squared, you're gonna replace that with -1.
So
I squared. I squared. What? I'm gonna do it out. Don't worry.
Did I do it wrong?
I'm just gonna wait until he does it and then.
Okay. So notice the first one I gave you, we did very well. This one, a little harder, but we can still do it.
Is it 10 space?
So, bomb. Okay.
So Brian, my calculator just glitched out.
Glitched out.
I have to answer. Come back.
Okay, are we ready? I'm not closing the poll. I am going to do it for you. Come on. Okay. No.
Yeah.
I was listening to one of my screencasts the other day, and I was like, oh man, I like was really loud for a moment there. I listened to my screencast the other day because I was just trying to see what something was said. Okay, so and together we're gonna FOIL it out. So first, I'm gonna have 12i. The O of I is the outer, so this is minus 3i squared. What?
Oh, you're right.
Go quickly. I inner plus 8. So by now you've had enough time to work on it, so we should be silent. So if people are confused, they can pay attention. So now we should be silent, not making noises or being distractive.
Okay.
I'm looking right at you to be silent. Okay. I inner, so that's plus 8 and L for the last. That's going to be minus 2i. So 12i minus 2i is 10i.
Wait, minus?
Yeah, minus 2i, because it's plus 2 times negative I. Right here, this guy, I can replace I squared with negative 1. So negative 3 times negative 1? 3. So here I have a 3 plus 8. What is 3 plus 8? 11. So it's 10i plus 11. You could have said 11 plus 10i. Do we know how to write an I in our calculator?
Yeah.
Oh, I just put the.
Did I put like a regular I?
Well, okay, I would allow it for this one, but I'm going to show you exactly how to find it. So let me write out the answer for you. Ready? So 10, I need the I. So you see where there's a little pi button, the second from the left and the bottom?
Yes, ma'am.
You click it. What is this right here?
No.
Ah, it's this special I for imaginary. Okay. Plus 11. So I went down to where there was pi in the bottom left corner of your calculator, and it pops up the I. There. So that's fine for this, for me, like seeing if it's correct. But I'm showing you if you're like trying to calculate it. So for instance, if I go to my calculator, you see how, I'm about to click that calculator tab. You see how I click the calculator right here? I'm trying to hold it down. Okay, let me try this again. Right here, do you guys see on my screen where I'm pointing? Very left corner, between tab and escape. So if I put I to the 47th, it also should show me what the answer would be. So I click I to the 47th power, and it shows negative I.
That's so cool.
Whoa! Which means on your chapter 4 test, which I'm allowing you to use your calculator for the whole time, you have to show your work. So for instance, if I ask you what I to the 47th is, and you only wrote negative I, while that is the correct answer, you'd get exactly 0 points. 0 points. Because I have to see work. I have to see work. Show your work.
The answer's right.
Yeah, but there's points associated for every step of the work, and if you don't do the work, you don't get those points.
I do it in different. I just
So,
look at the.
please come back together. If you have a question, raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to go through how to find the I again. So you go down to the pi. Stop talking. Go down to the I. Or go down to pi, and you see there's an I. I can click the I. And then if you want it to a certain power, you use the caret key. That's to the left of the x squared, right? It gives you an exponent. I could put any number there. I could, huge. Let's do 1,233.
Keep on pressing 0.
It's I. You could also find this, and the way to do it on your test, I'm telling you right now, so that way you get your full points. Take the number, divide by 4. What is the remainder? And you count using the pattern.
Wait, okay, so right now it's a drop-down menu.
What?
What?
If you have a question, please raise your hand, because I want to make sure we do one at a time. Cooper.
By showing your work, can you just divide it before and then say like remainder 2 or remainder 3 or something?
Yes, that's exactly what you do. Okay. So, showing your work, because there are points associated with the dividing by 4, with saying what the remainder is, and then showing which one it is.
Why is my
And the reason, what?
Can you repeat what Cooper said?
So Cooper said, how would I show my work for that? So I'm going to show you how you would show your work. So if I had I to the 47th, this is what I'm expecting to see. I to the 47. So you say 47 divided by 4 is 11 and remainder 3. So remainder 3. And remember the order, so it goes I, negative 1, negative I, 1. So this is remainder 3. So it's not horrible. It's not crazy, but that is something.
That's all you have to do.
Because imagine you actually wrote it wrong. Whatever. There are points associated with every step of the work. And the reason I do that is so when you get something wrong, you just don't lose all your points, because that would suck. I want to help you as much as possible. So showing all your partial work, all the partial credit will come to you. Okay. All right. So let's everyone sit up. Jordan, sit up. Here we go. So that is the second one. We went over the solution to this. So I'm going to close the poll. Perfect.
Yeah.
Where?
No, I want to do it for the
Too bad. All right. I want to go over B again because when let's see, I had you yesterday, right before the end of the day. I made a minor brain aneurysm in the sense that, not a real aneurysm, just like a little brain fart where,
happens to me a lot.
right. So I made a little mistake. It's not a huge one. The only difference is the answer is not going to be 2 root 6. It's just going to be negative 2 root 6. All right, so it's minor, but it also changes a little bit. So that's why I'm making like a thing of it, like making sure to go over it again. So the reason is because when I have root negative 1 times root negative 1, we said, oh, that's literally just going to be negative 1. Right? Because I could rewrite root negative 1 as I times I, and we know I squared is defined to be negative 1. Okay, so what this means is saying root negative 12 is another way to say I root 12. So I could write these as imaginary numbers. So now when I multiply them, I have I squared times root 24. And yesterday we showed the work on how to simplify the radical of root of 24. So this is I squared times 2 root 6. We know I squared is negative 1, so that's why this turns into negative. And I apologize for the mistake. But
Can you say I squared 2 root 6?
I mean, it is what it is. I have to remind myself that like one small mistake doesn't define me, and I look at how much I've done that is correct. I'm like, okay, this is fine. I have to remember I'm human because I'm such a perfectionist. Yeah. So the little negative, right. But it also bothers me when I like do something little that's wrong for you guys. Because I'm trying to like make sure everything is crisp and clear as necessary.
Being imperfect is perfect.
Right. Which is why I'm like telling you guys about this. So if you look at your homework, like you can go back, star this. So that way you go back in your homework and you make sure that if you had a radical, like 2 radicals where they're both negative under and you're multiplying, like make sure you deal with the fact that like technically root negative 12 is an imaginary number because you can't actually take a root of a negative number. So by writing it in its imaginary form, like, and then multiplying, you'll get a negative instead. Okay, that was the mistake I made, and now we can go over 4.5. What? Relatively quick. It's just the biggest thing if you watch the screencast of my other class is just like patience, because instead of just giving it to you guys and you guys being like, what the heck did you do? So I'm trying to like break it into small parts. That way when we come back together in like 20 minutes, do the whole thing, you'll be like, I got it. I see every single step. So first,
Have we covered the most difficult thing?
yeah, the longest section was 4.3.
That one.
That was like 3 days. And if you look, we're on page 37 of 42, and there's 2 lessons. So 4.6 is the quadratic formula, which you already know. This one we've already semi-covered. But the goal of this is we're looking how to solve by completing the square. Solving by completing the square.
See, that whole I thing just messed me up.
Yeah,
I don't understand life anymore.
Dude, I agree.
Are you guys just typing messages to each other? What are you doing?
Notice how you said I in every sentence that you
What are you doing? Come look. Yes. Are you just like typing messages to each other?
No.
Okay, so get out your notes. Jordan, do you have your notes? Do you have your
That's
notes?
such a good idea, though.
Yeah.
Okay, get them out because we're going over a new lesson. Kaden, do you have your notes out? Okay, cool. So, as stated, first day of class. Expectation for 100% participation is you have your notes out, you have your calculator, you are awake, that means not sleeping, paying attention, so that means not distracting others. Cool. Should be like here getting 100 participation. Square root property. So if you have a square root, there's going to be two solutions. So I kind of covered this already. I think yesterday I discussed it. If I would have something like x is equal to the root of 81, what is x equal to?
The root of 81.
9, right? Square root of 81 is 9. Okay. Versus if I said x squared is equal to 25, what's the answer? So I have to square root both sides. And then I get x is plus or minus 5. Now, the difference I want you to see. On this right side, give you the radical, and you are computing. You're finding the solution, right? The radical was like printed on there for you. It was given to you. There's only one solution. If you have to take the square root, okay? So if we saw x squared is 25, and we had to take the square root. We had to write the square root on the paper. Whenever you are taking the square root, it's not just there for you. You have to take it to solve. You include the plus or minus.
Okay.
So I'm describing, when do you have plus or minus? When is it just going to be the plus?
So it's when it's x squared and you have.
So when you have your variable squared and you're solving for your variable, you know plus or minus. Okay, that's a square root property, right? For any real number, if x squared equals n, then x is just going to be plus or minus the root of that number.
Is that it?
That's for the first part, yes. My goal is having you understand when do you have plus or minus, when do you not. So I know I put like a picture for like 2 weeks on your MyJag on the front. And it was on the front page, so you would read it.
So A is A plus or minus 9.
Exactly. So I had to take the square root, and when we are taking the square root, notice it wasn't on our paper before, we have to include the plus or minus. So this was perfect. There's two solutions. The plus or minus, keep in mind, this means A is equal to positive 5 and A is equal to negative 5. Two solutions. The plus or minus means you do it once with the plus, once with the negative. Okay, so this was once again, this is a nice lob of a baseball, so you can like have a home run, right? Ideally, you're like, cool, I get this one.
I used to play baseball.
Nice little what?
I used to play baseball.
I know, you told us last time. Yep, you told us this yesterday. Who? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that way. I did not mean it that way. I'm acknowledging what you said, and I was showing you I was listening to you talking about it yesterday.
No,
Okay.
Of course. I didn't think of it.
Cooper making something out of nothing. Okay, let's try B. So, one person, let's have eeny, meeny, cool. Jacob, how would I go about solving for B? Describe how we would solve for B.
So you square like everything into
Square root,
Yeah.
okay.
So b plus 4 equals and then plus or minus 9. Don't know 49 squared.
So it's a square root of 49. So what times itself is
square root
49? Yeah.
Oh,
Is 7.
7.
I'm so stupid.
No, don't. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Not great.
Just hit your head really hard.
Never say
Don't degrade yourself.
Don't degrade yourself.
You lost brain cells.
Whatever. Okay. So I have.
Okay, like I thought I had to multiply
Sure.
49 by itself, but I was
Okay.
I was just messing.
Do you have your phone? Do
What?
you have your phone? Is your calculator? Why just in your pocket? Never mind.
It's not in my pocket, it's on my lip.
You like pulled it out of your sweater. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to set b plus 4 equal to 7 and b plus 4 equal to negative 7, the plus or minus.
During like town hall,
gonna be
sometimes
two
I use
answers.
my calculator to see if any of the deans will get mad at me for being on my phone.
They probably do.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, it's my calculator, relax.
I'm like, why are you doing that?
Really funny.
Okay, so we got to focus or we're not going to get through this. So there's two solutions. Two solutions. Ah, okay. What?
See, I did ratio.
The ratio of
Girls to boys.
the boys. What are they called?
It's Zelo Gadol, you know?
Okay. So, next one. Next one. We want to solve this equation. Do we recognize it as a special quadratic?
That was so mean.
Please focus.
I really think I do. Yes.
Do you need a moment? Okay, then let's focus. So, how do I factor C? How do I factor C?
8.
Cooper.
I was just gonna say find the greatest comes back to, but there is no.
What
subtractor.
adds to 12, multiplies to 36?
6
no.
6 and
6
6.
equals 36, but it also equals 12. And now it's still.
I appreciate the enthusiasm, but pause. So, this is a special case. It is called a
No, trinomial.
perfect square trinomial. Perfect square trinomial. Literally, the words, get your foot off the desk. Foot off desk. Okay. Perfect square trinomial, meaning it is trinomial, 3 numbers, and it's a perfect square, meaning, hold on. So this is a perfect square, meaning this is actually the same binomial. So literally, it's going to be the binomial squared. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So perfect square binomial. If you look in the middle, half the middle, 6, and then squared is going to be your C. So half the middle squared should be your third one. That's a perfect square trinomial. I want you to recognize the perfect square trinomial. We kind of covered it before. Today is all about perfect square trinomials. How do you solve by completing the square? That's our goal to get through today. So now, yes, what?
Because there's one on the homework like that I just didn't understand, and I don't know if it's the same thing. It's set up the same way, but it wasn't solved like that.
Why don't you come to bonus and ask questions instead of another class for right now? Okay, what is this from? Which lesson? 4.3, and then what's your... Which one do you have questions?
Like it's just like this kind. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. This is not a perfect square trinomial. So if you take the middle and half it and then square it, this is not what you do.
Because I looked at how to find like how to do it. I saw it's the same thing.
When I was in your hangouts all
Okay, sorry.
If you factor
always said yes, though.
7 and 4, negative 7
No,
plus
see, this
4
starts
is
talking like
negative
this
3.
3 times and I'm
Negative 7 plus 4 is
please
negative
stop,
28.
stop.
See, that's one of the part of
You're
your
factoring the way we did 4.3. You look at 4.3.
Yeah, I know.
So this is similar to what you did before in the sense that it is a quadratic. It's a quadratic and it's set equal to 0. The whole goal of this chapter is solving quadratics. How do you solve a quadratic? First, look for the greatest common factor. Is there anything you can pull out? Then you look, is it a special case? Is it difference of squares or perfect square trinomial? Then, if none of those are true, you keep going down the list. And Felix, turn around. Then you try to factor. Then you do quadratic formula. Notice, I knew what you were going to do, so pay attention. No, so Jacob, you got to quit talking today, okay? Today is all about focusing. So, I know you guys. And this is called tough love, because I want you to do well in my class. How do you do well? I got to whip you into shape. Let's go. So, perfect square trinomial. It's a perfect square trinomial. It's the same factor twice. So, in the sense that, guess what? X squared plus 12x plus 36 does look a lot like what we did in 4.3. Because it is a quadratic set to 0. But how do you actually solve it? You have to go through the list.
Is
So,
that the final answer?
no. Because did we solve it? Did we solve what x was equal to?
No.
No. So, we're not done. We got to solve it. So, I have x squared, x plus 6 squared. I need to get x by itself. So, first thing I'm going to do now, take the square root of both sides. What is the square root of 0? 0. Why do I not have a plus or minus in front of the 0?
It's 0, it's not going to do anything.
Right, 0 is not positive or negative. Unlike the square root of 1, you could take negative 1 times negative 1, and that's 1. Take positive 1 times positive 1, and that's 1. But 0, the only thing multiplied by itself that is 0 is 0. There's only one solution.
Math is a journey.
Solid. Yep, and that's a really old poster because the backpacks, we don't have external frames like that anymore.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, what?
Oh, did she like climb?
You don't have external what?
Yeah, I've done that a bunch. Okay, external frame. So if you look at the backpack, there's literally aluminum on the outside. That's stopped in the late 90s.
Oh, really?
Early 2000s, yeah.
What?
What do they got?
External
It
frames.
looks like a pretty clear
Like, set it
Okay.
down.
So you can attach things on the outside.
It still applies to our class because we never show our work.
Yep, you guys very, oof.
What's the external?
If I could just have $1 every time I wrote or said show your work, I wouldn't have to work here.
That's true.
Literally, I could afford to not work here. That's how crazy it is. Okay, so we solve for C. What is this noise? I'm done. I'm marking people down. I'm done. Okay. So, D, we're on D, the one that's not done, because we've done the first three. So, I need to solve for n. First thing I should do, remember, use order of PEMDAS. Done. What's the first thing I should do? Good, divide by 3. N squared is going to be 16. Now, so when if I had a number to plug in for n, you would do the exponent before you do the division. To get n by itself, you have to get rid of any coefficient before you get rid of the exponent.
And the answer's n plus 4.
Yep, go ahead, done.
So square root.
Square root both sides.
Yeah, and then n is plus or minus.
4.
Go, cool, exactly. So n equals positive 4, n equals negative 4.
Are you okay with just the n equals plus minus 4?
That's why I circled it. But I'm showing that the two solutions are n is positive 4 and n is negative 4. Because I want to make sure people understand what plus or minus means. It means there's two solutions. Plus or minus means there's the positive 4 and negative. Okay. Sure. Okay.
Subtract 16?
So notice this left side is a perfect square trinomial. What is half of negative 6? Right? And then if I square it, it's a C. Okay, so we know the left side's a perfect square trinomial. So if I could write that as a perfect square trinomial, that'd be great. So x minus 3 times x minus 3 equals 16. Because the idea is we're trying to use the perfect square property. While this is not exactly apparent in this example,
Can't you?
soon this is I'm trying to prepare you for the next steps. So I'm doing all of the steps of completing the square. It's just not all together yet. While this makes not really much sense of why I'm doing it in this way, hopefully the next page you'll be like, oh, okay, I see why you did that problem. I see why you did that problem, because it's all part of the actual method of completing the square. So my goal here is, okay, now it's not just equal to 0 like it was before in part C. So I could solve, so I can write the left side as a perfect square trinomial.
Why can't you square both sides to get x minus 3 equals 4?
I am about to square root
Sorry.
both sides. That's the next thing. I am square rooting both sides. So that way I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus 4. So I have x minus 3 equals positive 4. I have x minus 3 equals negative 4. So if I add 3 to both sides, I see x equals 7. Add 3 to both sides, I see x equals negative 1. Okay, while we could have subtracted 16 from both sides, and then we could factor on the left, the idea is, if I have a perfect square trinomial on one side, I could write it as since it has the same, two binomials being multiplied, I could write it as that binomial squared, and then solve for our variable that way. Yeah, it's a weird method, but it is what it is. I didn't write it, and gotta make sure to teach you it, so. What about F? Maybe I should have put F before I did E. Okay. I heavily revised these notes from last year, so that is what it is. I'm trying to make it more easy. Yes. So guess what? Tall said square root both sides. Yeah, let's square both sides. M minus 5 equals plus or minus root 13.
But you keep it root
I have a
13,
question.
right?
Because it's prime. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you square everything first?
Square?
Is it 5?
Because the left side's squared. To get rid of this square, I square root. To get rid of the square, you square root. So if I add 5 to both sides, I have m, oh my gosh, come on. I have m is equal to 5 plus or minus root 13. This is fine. This is actually a precise answer. This is an exact answer. If you use decimals, that's an approximate. This is an exact, because that's the root.
Wait, can the plus or minus not go in front of the 5?
It's in front of the root 13. Are you asking about the order if I write it? If I say plus or minus root 13 plus 5?
No, you're saying m equals plus or minus 5. square root 13.
It's not plus or minus 5.
Okay.
The plus or minus is in front of the root 13. And like this right side looks funny. I always write the plus or minus so it's in the middle. So secretly, you know, this means my two solutions are 5 plus root 13 and 5 minus root 13. And this is ideal. Because I don't want you to write root 13 like 3.6. So it'd be like, oh, 8.6 blah 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 blah. Or 1.4 blah 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 blah. Like those would be your two answers and it'd be decimals. So you can just leave in root, I don't care. The part I care about is your order. How did you go through the method? The answer is not as important as you actually applying the method we're learning. Okay, so we're going to skip example 2 because I got a little crazy with the number of examples I added. We might come back, but I want to go through and solve by completing the square. So the idea is, for these two, what value of c would make each expression a perfect square? So don't say it out loud. Ready? We're not saying it out loud. Think to yourself. We're doing a first. Think to yourself. What value of c would make this a perfect square trinomial? And when you're done thinking in your head, turn to the person next to you and discuss how you found it. Discuss how you found what value of c this would be. Now, what number should I plug in for c? Literally, the question is written on your paper. What value of c will make each expression a perfect square trinomial? Okay, so, do you know? No? Okay, Kaden, tell us how you found it. Shh, hold on. Kaden will explain it as soon as there's no talking. Okay.
I thought of it as like the add and then the multiply, so I figured out the numbers that you would use for the add, and then I just use those to multiply figures.
So it's, yeah, so you take the number in the middle, and it's half of that. Half of negative 14 is negative 7. And then your c is going to be that number squared. 7 squared is going to be 49. Cool, and then if I plug that in, then x squared minus 14x plus 49 would be a perfect square trinomial. Then, if I plug in 49, I could write this as x minus 7 and x minus 7. Perfect square trinomial. Trinomial, because there's 3 terms. Perfect square, because these are the same factors. I could write this as a square, right? X minus 7 squared. Wonderful. All this question was asking for was the value of c. I'm trying to explain what it means to be a perfect square trinomial. Yes? This part? At what point did you get confused? Got it. Okay, so I'm not sure where to pause and help you. Hopefully it will make more sense as we go through it. And then it will get better, because I'm not sure.
That's 81. That's what Ryan.
What?
How do I know which numbers to divide?
So you divide the one in the middle, your b. So I think this will answer some questions.
Sorry, I'm just looking at.
I'm literally facing the board.
Do you need to be moved?
No, I'm facing.
Okay.
I'm just like.
I told you the answer.
So nice.
So just like don't distract others. Remember earlier when you said something about Jacob and then ooh, there's a ruckus. Okay, so
That even made me laugh.
tone it down. Dial it in, all right? We are focusing. Okay, because I'm done with it as well. Okay, so we have to have this. Stop talking. Stop talking. I take 1 second to turn and start the lesson. You immediately talk to him. So, in order to do our little trick to figure out if it's a perfect square trinomial, we have to have it in standard quadratic form. Ax plus bx plus c. So, to be a perfect square trinomial, literally you take your middle number, your b, and divide it by 2. Right? That would be the factor here. Right? Your factor for your perfect square trinomial, you're picking the same number. It would be half of whatever's in your middle. Now, your C, hold on, for a perfect square trinomial, your C is going to be that number squared. So it'd literally be b squared over 4. So that's weird, because now I'm only talking about in terms of like a's and b's and et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at our example. So I want half of my middle number. Half of 18 is 9, meaning my two factors should be x plus 9 and x plus 9, because half of positive 18 is 9. All right, we take 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then I need to square it. My C is going to be half of my middle squared. Half of 18 is 9, and then square it, and C should be 81. Another way to figure this out is if you pick the number that's half of your middle, go ahead, put it in your binomial, and then you could FOIL this out, and you would see you get 81, right? Because this is equal to 18x plus 81. So we're trying to figure out what value should I plug in for C so that would make this a perfect square trinomial.
And that's all you have to do for that.
That's all this example is asking for. So, yes? Sure. I have screencasts. Cool. You guys had a, never mind. Had nutrition to go. So now we are solving by completing the square. What?
No, I said that we have that.
At 55. Solve by completing the square. So now we're going to put everything together. We're going to find mystery numbers. What number would make it a perfect square trinomial? Then we're going to write it. So we're going to use this part to figure out, okay, well, what number would make what I have a perfect square trinomial? Then I'm going to use this part up here when I have written it as a perfect square trinomial and with a number on the right side to actually solve what my x value would be. So putting it all together, this first one may be a little rough because you're like, what are you doing?
You can change it however you want.
Not exactly
You always have to
changing
use
it.
C. You're changing the C, right?
Wait like 10 seconds and I think this will answer your question. Okay, so first thing I want to do, I want to solve by completing the square. So ideally I'd like to write the left side as x squared minus 10x plus a mystery number. So I'm going to subtract 24 on both sides. And move, okay, so I'm going to subtract 24 on both sides. Move it over. Now I have x squared minus 10 equals negative 24. So ideally, I would like to add a number on the left side to make it to be a perfect square trinomial. The issue is, it has to be balanced, right? What you add to one side, you have to add to both sides. What's my mystery number? What do I need to add to both sides so I can rewrite the left side as a perfect square trinomial? How do you know? Okay, so you take your middle number, divide by 2, so that's negative 5, and if you square it, we're going to add 25 on both sides. So what this means is I can rewrite my left side as x minus 5 squared. Because both factors are going to be x minus 5, and oh, if there's two of the same thing, I could just write it as squared, x minus 5 squared. What about the right side? Negative 24 plus 25? 1. So you see that this portion right here is from the example we just did, figuring out what number would make this a perfect square trinomial. This portion right here is from the first page, trying to figure out, like, okay, if I have this, how do I actually solve for x? You have to square root both sides. So if I square root both sides, I have x minus 5 equals plus or minus 1. So I'll have two solutions. What?
How do you get the first x minus 1 squared?
So if I want to write this as a perfect square trinomial, right, I knew I'd have to put in a 25, add 25 to both sides. That would mean the two factors would be x minus 5 and x minus 5. And that x minus 5 times x minus 5 is the same thing as x minus 5 squared. So I have x minus 5 equals 1, and I have x minus 5 equals negative 1. Add 5 to both sides. We see x equals 6, and x equals 4. So while you could have just factored this example, right, because you know negative 6 and negative 4 add to negative 10, they multiply 24. If it wants you to solve by completing the square, you have to do this method. Is this a new method? No, because this is from Algebra 1. But did you remember it? Probably not, which is fine. So I'm reteaching it. Solve by completing the square. So first, move the plain number to the other side. Then, find what number you have to add on both sides in order to make the left a perfect square trinomial. Then what you're going to do is rewrite it as a perfect square trinomial and solve for the variables. So let's do B. So, first step, move the 25 to the other side. Alright, so now I have x squared plus 12x is equal to negative 25. Alright, next step, find the mystery number. What should I add on both sides to make the left a perfect square trinomial? 36. How did you find 36?
12 by 2
Is 6, okay, and squared. 6 squared is 36. I'm going to add 36 to both sides. This way I can write the left side as x plus 6 squared. What is negative 25 plus 36?
11.
Yeah. Yeah, negative. I'm trying to think which example am I thinking of? Minus 11 is 4. I think we're okay. Okay, so I add 36 on both sides. Okay. And then I need to square root both sides. So I have x plus 6 equals plus or minus root of 11. Last step, how do I actually finish solving this?
X plus 6 equals 11, x plus 6 equals negative 1. Then 2.
So I can set x plus 6 equals root 11 and x plus 6 equals negative root 11. So I subtract 6 from both sides. So I see x is equal to root 11 minus 6 and x is equal to negative root 11 minus 6.
Can you just leave it as like
So what you could write it as is literally negative 6 plus or minus root 11. That would be acceptable as well. All right, let's try the next one. See if you... Question.
So these 2 points are like the solutions, like you put on triangle.
Exactly, those would be your x-intercepts. Yep, so let's try the next one.
so you can like put that in the calculator
And then like,
no wait, you're not gonna do this in dot.
but like, let's say you would put on a graph, those would be the 2 like
Yeah,
points
yeah.
where it intersects on the x, right?
Yep, on the x-axis.
Says x equals.
No.
Oh no.
So, first step, subtract 2. Move the number over. What?
Can I take this off?
Did I move too fast?
Ryan, you really did it to us.
What?
Can I take this off?
Sure. Sure you can take it off. I'm just going to be doing this last problem. So, x squared plus 2x plus a mystery number. Because I moved the plain number to the other side. Then I want to find the mystery number to make the left a perfect square trinomial. Yes.
Plus 2.
What is half of 2?
1.
When what's 1 squared? 1. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. This is a mistake people make all the time.
I always do
This
that.
is why I'm going through it over and over and over again. Okay. So I can write this as x plus 1 squared equals negative 1. Uh-oh. What happens when I square root both sides?
Oh, it doesn't.
Equals I. Plus or minus I.
Oh! I didn't realize. I don't know what to do for improvement. Do you?
So I find that x is going to be negative 1 plus or minus I. Because whenever you have negative 1.
So it's hella simple.
Yeah.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah. So, for example, this is the case where the parabola doesn't touch the x-axis. We still have 2 solutions, but they're both imaginary. They're not real. So E and F, I'm not going to give you a problem to complete the square with a coefficient in front of x that's other than 1. The D is also going to give you an imaginary solution. All right, because if... yeah. Oh, we still have like a minute? Cool. So half of 4 is 2, and if you square it, is 4. Okay, so I want to add 4 to both sides. Sorry, because I add negative 11.
It would have to be plus 16.
So instead of saying plus or minus root negative 7, I could instead say plus or minus I root 7. So then the answer would be negative 2 plus or minus I root 7. So I go through this example a little slower in the other screencast, but I think you guys get it because we went over the imaginary before.
Can you leave it as